Welcome to the Superheroes Everyday podcast. I'm Danny Horn. Thank you for joining us. Superheroes Everyday is a comedy blog about the history of superhero movies, starting with Superman the movie in 1978, and telling the story of how superhero blockbusters became the world's most efficient way to painlessly separate money from the public, and then give it to entirely the wrong people. On the blog, I'm writing about the movies in release order, but here on the podcast, we'll be covering pivotal moments in superhero movie history. Today, we are addressing that 2016 basket of sadness, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Now, there's got to be something else in your life that you should be attending to, so I'm using the Sid Field 3-act structure to break up the episode. So this is Act 1 of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and then I'll be releasing Act 2 and Act 3 later on in the week. We're actually going to be talking about the Ultimate Edition today. That's Zack Snyder's director's cut, because the theatrical release basically doesn't make sense. That's an extra 31 minutes of the movie. So in this episode, Act 1 is going to be kind of an extended cut as well. It's going to be a little longer than normal because it's a 3-hour movie and we have a lot to say about it. But we're back to regular length episodes for Act 2 and Act 3. Now I want to introduce my fantastic guest, Stephen Robinson, staff writer for the hilarious political website Wonkette and creator of the politics and pop culture podcast, The Playtyper Guy. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, Danny. How are you? Thanks for inviting me on.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. I think we originally knew each other from back on my Dark Shadows blog.
Yes, which is, I always recommend that folks read it, and I quote it constantly. I will get into one of your key characterization things, but as someone who teaches writing as well as doing theatrical stuff, you kind of gave some great advice in a sort of easy to distill form that I often use. So,
that's great. I actually started this thinking you were going to talk about yourself, but I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, yes, I do theater and politics, an intersection of both. Up in Seattle, I've worked with the theater companies Book It and Cafe Nordo, and then here in Portland, Oregon, the Portland Playhouse. And yes, I'm someone, I think it was discussed before this, who is inclined to not want to kind of smugly dismiss something that people put a lot of time and effort into. Mm-hmm. So when I see something of like, wow, this is really bad, and there are moments of this where it's like, oh, you could do this and you're willingly not doing it. That is, to me, very concerning.
It is a concerning film. So this is a follow-up. Man of Steel was 2013, also written by David Goyer, directed by Zack Snyder. I covered Man of Steel and its many hilarious flaws in the first episode of this podcast. But this movie then is the second one that's going to lead up to Wonder Woman in 2014 and then Justice League. Zack Snyder was supposed to be the leader of the DC film universe at the time. His movies were the tentpoles that were supposed to set the tone and the overall storyline. He had 5 films planned, but things went awry, and this movie is one of those things.
Yeah, it's obviously loosely based on Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns from the mid-'80s. That comic, it influenced arguably way too much, and you can see where someone like Snyder would just grab at the sort of darkest elements without understanding what the actual book was about. As someone who's adapted stuff to the stage, the first thing you want to do is like not just throw things that are familiar,
right,
but to actually understand what the original was saying and doing and communicating, and even argue like, will it still work, because it's been almost 40 years.
Right.
And Snyder clearly did not. He was sort of very, I think you alluded to this in Man of Steel, sort of toxic masculinity. I remember him being very excited about one specific line, but when they were talking about this movie coming out, and he was at a con, and he's talking about the line where Batman is telling a defeated Superman, I want you to remember the one man who beat you. And it's like, okay, well, that's the whole reason you're making this.
And it seriously is. Yeah.
It's like you don't get what that was really about. And we can get into that later.
Well, let's just run the numbers. Batman v Superman, it made $330 million at the domestic box office, number 8 film for the year, and was widely considered a failure because the blockbuster movie industry has lost all sense of proportion. $330 million for a normal movie would be an amazing result. But Batman v Superman cost about $300 million to make and market, and they're not going to all this trouble to make $30 million. Like,
No.
That's not the business we're in. They were hoping for $1 billion worldwide. They earned noticeably less than that. And the reviews were just brutal. Like, it's got 29% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is on par with The Punisher and Ghost Rider and Green Lantern.
Mhm.
I think the most useful comparison here is Deadpool, which came out just a month earlier in February 2016. Batman v Superman features DC's 3 top-tier superheroes, like some of the most recognizable fictional characters in the world. And Deadpool was like mid to low tier Marvel anti-hero that most people didn't know. And their budget was about a fifth of Batman v Superman's budget. But people loved it, and it made 363 million. It hit number 6 for the year, and it got 85% on Rotten
Yeah.
Tomatoes. So that just made Batman v Superman look even worse. Like, just
It was an R-rated movie as well.
yeah.
And Captain America, so Civil War, which is essentially the same
Yeah,
thing, was coming up,
Mhm.
made significantly more, over $1 billion, and even more domestically. So just in comparison, it's like you were given the sort of, as you said, all these recognizable characters
Mhm.
and kind of failed to
Yeah.
actually capitalize on it.
And so, yeah, this was not a successful movie. Let's find out why. And we'll jump into Act One. Now, to start with, Stephen, there was a time above, a time before. This is what we are informed at the beginning of this dumbass movie.
I was like, I just want to get up and leave at that point.
There were perfect things, Stephen. Diamond absolutes, but things fall, things on Earth, and what falls is fallen. So if you were wondering what happens to things on Earth, now you know. That's very helpful.
Not only is it narration,
Yeah,
it's bad narration. It's not like character driven and kind of fitting it. It's just vague, kind of
yep.
like non-human communication.
Diamond absolutes, yeah. What this is all about is it's a double funeral for fancy people who live in like a big Downton Abbey type mansion, probably in Delaware. And young son is spoiling the party by running off into the woods to a new life as a lost orphan. Now we're getting into some of that Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns. We're going to see a couple scenes from that coming up. So we've got this explanatory flashback where once again we've got good old-fashioned on-screen parent death,
Mm-hmm.
which I have run into in this podcast distressingly often.
And Bruce Wayne's parents being killed.
Mm-hmm.
Starting with this, it's one of it already, with the Nolan films, it already kind of shown us this. People get Batman.
Yeah.
You know, it feels, in other words, show Batman, maybe at a certain point do a flashback when emotionally. I mean, of course, Snyder does both.
Right.
So,
yeah,
like, God forbid he make a choice.
He wants the parent death right up front. Coming out of the movie theater, guy with the gun, bad hombre.
The idea of him seeing the mark of Zorro, which again would have been a very weird film for his family to have seen in the mid 80s. They
seemed very, very happy about it, though. They enjoyed the hell out of that movie.
Yeah, whatever art house was showing it.
Yeah.
I have a very inquisitive and precocious 9-year-old. I don't know if a black and white Tyrone Power movie would have been on his wish list, but maybe
they were just in a real good mood going into the movie, and the movie just didn't ruin it.
And the criminal being very supportive of the plot does not kill the one eyewitness. Like, right. Generally,
yeah, no, naturally, why would you?
Oh no, I must leave. This eyewitness who's like,
no, there's 3 things to kill. There's dad, and there's mom, and then there's the pearls, and you got to kill all 3 of those.
They don't even look like very early 80s. I would just love, like, just it's 1981. I want them to be very early 80s. I want them to have been coming out of Empire Strikes Back. Like, I want it to feel like something. Instead, it's this otherworldliness.
Does Thomas have a hat on? It feels like the kind of scene. Now that you're saying that, it's like it feels like he would have a hat on. Like, this is sort of the past.
Yes.
Without being a specific. Yeah. And then he falls down a bat hole. And officially becomes a crazy person. There are 1 billion bats in this hole. It's not nighttime, so they really should have been sleeping. But he bothers them, and they just swarm up and out of the hole, lifting young Bruce in their collective wings. He is transfigured. It's a hard scene. I find it difficult.
I fast forward through it because it's like, I've seen all this.
Well, now, speaking of things that you've seen, now we're in Metropolis on its worst day from the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
crazy general man from the planet Krypton. He's trying to terraform the Earth with a devastatingly powerful world engine positioned basically immediately above Broadway.
Yeah.
And General Zod, he's fighting with Superman. They're getting a lot of aerobic exercise. They're bashing each other around, ruin and devastation. And here is Bruce Wayne, Ben Affleck, just driving straight into the attack zone in his enormous sport utility vehicle.
He's from the start. Snyder clearly, I just want to clarify again, this is a Batman movie. So for all the Snyder heads who were like, oh my God, how could James Gunn abandon Henry Cavill and Superman? Yeah. He abandoned him after the first movie.
Or halfway through the first movie, some might say.
Yeah, exactly. This is a Batman movie in every possible way, guest starring Superman. Henry Cavill got demoted.
Yeah.
So here we have Bruce Wayne. He's not in a Batman outfit. He is clearly, he is every sort of good CEO stereotype, right? Like he care. They're a family. There are people who he's like calling. He knows the guy by name. When the building falls, he screams the guy's name, which I don't think, you know, Jeff Bezos would do. Or he's running in to help these people. And again, Snyder is, by showing us from Bruce's perspective, he's kind of doubling down on what was a major criticism of Man of Steel, that Superman was sort of had zero regard for human life
all of this, everything fell down and he just didn't care.
He didn't think to maybe take away some of these people, try to help people. It's just he's like, he's this figure of destruction that people are seeing, which will make the rest of the film very difficult to sympathize with Superman. Ideally, Batman is the character who doesn't want anyone else to be that little boy in the alley. So he's not about, I want to beat up the mugger. That's ancillary. It's about the little boy in the alley. And so Snyder, I would say to his credit, reinforces that when Bruce Wayne is holding the little girl.
Yeah, we get like two victims that he's going to be super interested in. There's Wallace, who's the security guard, and he knows the guy's name. He's got his legs trapped under a girder, and Bruce helps to lift the girder and pull the guy out. Yeah, and then there's this little girl.
So now it's suddenly this, I can't protect,
which he can't do. Yeah.
These are gods from the sky, destroy, and my own building these victims, and I failed them. And that to me is a compelling sort of, I need to protect the world from this threat.
Right.
So I'm on his side already, and we'll discuss why Superman has been failing to actually.
Yes. There are many examples. Yeah, we'll get into that. For
sure. To justify his existence after having been involved in a major terrorist attack.
Caption says 18 months later. That little girl is now running Wayne Enterprises. She's the only one left. It's been a very hectic 18 months for that little orphan girl. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Indian Ocean, where the other part of the world engine exploded, a guy is diving and he brings something up onto the beach to a white guy in a button-down shirt. And the guy smacks this black object with a hammer, and inside it, shining green kryptonite. Good old Special K. Which we know is dangerous. I forget exactly how we know. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, how everybody knows that kryptonite is dangerous to Superman. Did that even come up in Man of Steel?
It will come up later. Lex Luthor has figured that out. So we can discuss that, but like through testing or something.
And then we take you now to Nairobi, Africa, where journalist Lois Lane has arrived at a very dangerous compound for a very dangerous interview.
Oh my God. Lois insults a guy.
Yep.
That's our first introduction to her, where he's like trying to make, generally speaking, someone trying to be nice and make conversation with someone. And they're like, what I liked about the guy who had the job before, what he said, not a goddamn thing. It's like, huh?
Yeah.
Like,
and this is Jimmy Olsen too, who the audience is already primed to like the guy.
No, I mean, Margot Kidder would enter always like constant rapid fire talking, engaging. You want to be this person.
Amy Adams. Yeah.
Shutting down conversation is not what characters should do in the
right. Yeah. In the world of movies. Yeah.
We don't like them.
Yeah. And this, I think, is like the first example, and we're only like 2 minutes into the movie, first example of just pointless, destructive display of the strong dominating the weak. which happens all of the time in this movie. That's like the first of so many where everything's about strong dominating the weak. And so even poor little Jimmy Olsen, Lois is going to be, and it doesn't even make sense for Lois to instantly make an enemy of the only guy in the area who's not likely to shoot her. Typically, you want to back each other up in that dangerous situation, but
Yes.
alpha dominance is the only thing Zack Snyder knows. So Lois and Jimmy, they're brought to a compound, and there's a civil war going on in the country, and the guy that she's interviewing is a general for the rebels. America is supposed to be neutral in this war, but that is apparently debatable. Things are going to get, for me at least, very confusing very quickly. The general has troops, and basically, I think how this breaks down is there's black people and white people
Mm-hmm.
in this compound, and the white guys, I guess, are security contractors, is what they say. Lois sits down on the ground, talks to the general. First question out of her mouth is, "Are you a terrorist, General?" Which is a fairly abrupt interview style.
Mm.
You've done interviews before. That's not how you start.
No, that is sort of bad interview. Like, I like Amy Adams and
Yeah.
other things. I will be saying this a lot about actors in this
Yes.
movie. I like them and other things, but her Lois Lane is just dreadful, and it is just doesn't get any better from this.
Her second question is, who pays for these security contractors? And his response is, who pays for the drones that pass over our heads at night? This is a very good question, because we're going to find out immediately that the CIA is involved here somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy tries to take a picture. There's a guy, white guy in sunglasses with slick back hair, grabs the camera. We are going to see this guy a lot, and we're never really going to find out why. He's just kind of on screen, like whenever they need a scary looking dude to do a thing. His name is Anatoly Knyazev, and he is an actual Batman character from the comics called KG Beast.
That's a sort of a Tom Clancy-esque storyline from the late 80s, written by Jim Starlin, drawn by the great Jim Aparo. I recommend reading it. It's very dated, but it actually is just Batman as a Tom Clancy hero. It is interesting. But yes, that is, again, just it's a random Easter, like, oh, it's this character. But that's it.
That's it. He takes Jimmy's camera, he smashes it, he finds a little pulsing transmitter inside it. And it turns out that Jimmy Olsen, the photographer, is actually a CIA plant.
Mm-hmm.
It's not clear why they want that transmitter, because as we see almost immediately, there's a CIA drone that's watching them right now and knows their position, and they know when they shoot him in the face, like somewhere we see. So this is the part that's so confusing to me. Somewhere is this room where there's like sweaty CIA dudes who are aware that Jimmy's been killed, and they contact like a group of guys on the ground in burnouses who are out in the desert on horseback. I don't know what it's supposed to represent. Did you get any of this?
No, the scene is a mess. It is just leading up to more mess.
Yeah.
I just so resent what Snyder does with the sort of like, here's this Jimmy Olsen character who's sort of important, and oh, look, we're just going to kill him because I'm so big and macho. I can't imagine that one of my main characters, Superman, should have a friend.
A friend. Yeah. Anybody. Yeah.
This is a cool character you could have, and you could have situations where Superman has a friend because he has no friends.
Somebody to talk to.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
And they just shoot him in the face. Like, that's supposed to be shocking and exciting or something. It's just cruel.
General hears all the noise. He grabs Lois. He holds on to her, puts a gun to her head. The CIA guys have a missile that they're going to fire at the compound, which I do not understand at all, but they launch that missile. And Superman, like, as he's flying through to save Lois, like, he destroys that missile and he destroys the drone that launched it. I don't get why. And then, like, an avenging angel, space alien in a circus acrobat costume, he crashes through the roof of the little building where the general is holding Lois. He does not like seeing Lois Lane in danger, which is a shame, because being in danger is one of the things she likes best. This is like exactly the kind of reckless shit that Lois Lane gets up to. But they look at each other, and then Superman snaps into action. He rockets through the wall. The general is gone. Head of this rebellion is gone, and Lois Lane is just standing there.
Did he just kill him? That was very poorly shot.
We have no idea. Yeah, we don't know where he went from that moment. That is the last second that we see him. And so there's this aftermath. So the security contractors during all of this have shot all of the African people, all of the Nairobi people, and blown them up and put them in a pile and set them on fire. And then there's this group of African women, these Nairobi women show up. They get very upset about all of their husbands and boyfriends who were murdered in this incident. So the thing that is baffling to me is that somehow this is Superman's fault. Like, that is the animating principle behind Act One, is that Superman is responsible for all of these deaths at the compound. I honestly don't understand how anybody got that impression.
I mean, he intercedes in something that is, I guess, a CIA issue, and maybe there are people were.
But the CIA was sending a missile. They were going to blow up all of these people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple, and the big thing is that, as you said, Lois Lane is someone who gets into trouble, and this film seems to proceed with the idea that Superman gets involved because he cares a lot about Lois, whereas historically, Superman saves Lois a lot because she's in trouble a lot. Like, she's actively getting into things. It's not just that he only cares about her. If you think of how Superman 2 actually opens, the theatrical version with by Richard Lester, it opens with essentially a terrorist attack, Lois in the thick of it, and then he flies over, he stops the missile, and he smiles at her and makes a joke, right?
Yeah.
This is your stop.
And he is not doing that here.
No, he comes in and has this angry scowl, and it's like, Henry Cavill's an attractive man.
Yeah,
I would I wish I looked like Henry Cavill, but not in this movie. It's like he always looks angry and constipated, and that's not fun.
Right. It is not using him properly, and especially not using Henry Cavill. I agree, because I think Henry Cavill is one of the hottest people. I'm sorry, that's understating it. Henry Cavill is the hottest person in the world, I believe. And watching these two films, definitely you're like, he would make a great Superman.
Yeah. Give him a shot.
Yeah, that would be nice. So everybody's upset with Superman for showing up someplace where everybody shot everybody else. I don't get it. And here's Holly Hunter as Senator June Finch, who is grandstanding and speechifying. And she says, the world has been so caught up with what Superman can do that no one has asked what he should do. Let the record show we hold him responsible. And then there is a phony African lady who is there pretending to be one of the women from Nairobi, who says he'll never answer to you. He answers to no one, not even, I think, to God, which, incompetent scene making aside, I think is a really good point. Like, we engage in this very particular kind of fantasy with Superman that you can give somebody essentially unlimited power, and he will content himself with rescuing cats out of trees instead of engaging with global politics in any way.
Oh, yeah. Like, Batman is a realistic extension of, you have the vigilante. He's beating up criminals, so he's taking down the mob. Like, that works within whatever structure they would have. But with Superman, it's like, well, why isn't he taking over the world? And you open that Pandora's box after having a film where Snyder was like, this is going to be the first Contact story. It's like, okay, well, you've destroyed the house of cards upon which Superman sits. Because once you do that, then it's like, oh yeah, he's an alien.
No, he's scary.
Not only is he an alien who's, the people had to try to literally kill all these people, but he still was running around in this outfit that is of the people that tried to destroy, and I know I always hate when they try to justify why he's dressed this way. It's like, it's a circus outfit, right? Like, that's the story. But like they say, oh, his Kryptonian uniform, that's fine if you want to do it.
But that's clearly the enemy. Yeah.
It's like, this stands for hope. Well, no, actually it stands for
not around here. It doesn't. Yeah.
Who tried to kill us all 18 months ago. And I feel like, well, that's what's interesting, is that you don't even need this scene. Like, Holly, you should just start with Holly Hunter.
Right. Yeah. Just saying what is going on. Yeah.
Like, the 18 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You could just cut right straight to here. The weirdest thing about Superman in this movie for me is he doesn't try to talk to anybody. Like, people accuse him of things and they say, we're going to hold you responsible for stuff. And he just stands around and he looks kind of stricken. And he makes no effort to have any kind of dialogue. Like, he has every opportunity to explain himself in the press. He is a reporter.
And he's someone who doesn't wear a mask for the supposed reason of,
Yeah.
I'm here, I can be on a television show and talk to you and do all this stuff. And he never does that.
He is able to represent his own point of view. Yeah, he just doesn't talk. He basically ghosts humanity and then wonders why people don't understand him.
Yeah, well, you need to be very clear about why you're not Zod. We love that you snap the guy's neck, but otherwise, it's like, I watched The Godfather. That bad, I'm glad that Corleone whacked the bad mobster, but he's still a mobster. So that itself doesn't make me feel like I'm all on Team Corleone. Like, you need to be very clear that this wasn't just some, internal Kryptonian turf war, but that you are actually human. And in the real world, it would just be he's come forward and explained everything and been who I am.
He is like the hottest person and incredibly charming. And when he smiles, like people would believe that. I'd believe almost anything that man says. And the fact that he's not, it feels to me like look how far Snyder has to bend this character, like have him do something that just doesn't feel characteristic of, like, just keep him away from humanity, just to kind of like support this point, this political point that he's sort of trying to make. You want to see Batman though?
Yeah.
Next up, huge dark haunted house full of bats and sex trafficking. Couple of cops screech up to an abandoned house where a very bad man has been collecting unhappy Filipino women, keeping them locked up downstairs in this party dungeon. And they are looking around. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And what's going on is Batman is here, the Caped Crusader, taking on the image of a bat to strike terror into the hearts of criminals. And that is exactly what he's doing here. He is on message tonight. There is one guy who's in charge of this entire sex trafficking ring upstairs. He's doing it all on his own, which is actually kind of impressive. It's like a young Steve Jobs just building computers in his garage. This guy has a one-man operation. So Batman has beaten up the bad man, chained him up to the radiator. He takes a bat-shaped branding iron somehow and burned his logo into the guy's shoulder. So obviously he's working directly for like Warner Brothers licensing at this point. But the big point here is that, like, that brand, again, it's a symbol of masculine dominance, of Batman's dominance over this other person, which is basically Snyder's whole deal. That there's women in the basement who are basically faceless victims. There's women in the Nairobi compound who we don't really see. Like, those individuals are not important. The only thing that's important is they have been hurt, and we need to find the man who's responsible for this and then hurt that man. And then Lois comes home from Nairobi. During the massacre at the compound, somebody shot a bullet into her little leather-bound notebook.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets home, she starts unpacking, and she digs the bullet out, and she looks at it. She's going to make a real big deal about this bullet. Her investigations can take up a lot of her screen time. And the funny thing to me is that, like, she knows by sight that it's different from other bullets. Like, does she know every bullet personally?
She's very good about bullet identification. I like it. Really I like that about this Lois.
One of her skills. Yeah. She gets into the bath. I'm fine with that. That doesn't hurt my feelings. I'm sure people enjoy that. Holding the mysterious bullets, making her very thoughtful. And then Henry Cavill comes in fully in boyfriend mode, which is adorable. This is the one scene. You don't like it. Tell me. He's bringing flowers.
It's adorable. Yeah, it's just not... in a sort of a weird comparison, it's kind of like in later seasons of X-Files where Mulder and Scully are fully a couple, as opposed to earlier seasons where they're sort of bantering, solving crimes together. And so, and especially through Snyder's toxic masculinity, it's more of boyfriend, but I would rather Clark and Lois be in danger together. They work. That's what they do.
Working as a team. Yeah. And no, that absolutely does not happen in this movie at all.
But no, I mean, yes, there's a moment where it's cute, but I don't know. There's more sexual tension between Bruce and Alfred in a weird paternal way than in here. There's just like...
But he kisses her. He gets in the tub. He takes his shirt off. He is beautiful. We get to see that for a minute. This is my aesthetic. I have a very specific aesthetic for superhero movies, which is that, like, every movie in the world should include Henry Cavill taking his shirt off. Like, that's good cinema for me. And besides that, I'll agree with every single thing you say about it. So we get that done. Now we're in the Batcave. Bruce Wayne goes downstairs to his elaborate basement crime lab hangout space. And there's Jeremy Irons as Alfred, just being snotty and judgmental. They assume we've watched all the previous films. We already understand this love-hate relationship with his sarcastic mad scientist butler.
There's tension, but they are aligned in a common goal. And it's about progressing the goal as opposed to the previous thing being, I want my girlfriend out of trouble.
Right.
This is like they're actually connected on something and advancing the plot. I like that Batman at least does that because I'm glad that someone is advancing the plot such as this.
He absolutely is. He's got a Bat computer. It's very important. Has 6 big monitors on it. And if you got 6 big monitors, you can basically access anything. If there's anything else you want, you just buy another monitor and you find out more stuff. That's how that works. So he now has identified Anatoly. I'm gonna fail at pronouncing this several ways every single time I try. Anatoly Knyazev, KG Beast. They find out he does weapons and human trafficking, which is funny because we see him throughout this film. He mostly is doing other things. He does literally everything. He's a very hands-on terrorist. And so Bruce is convinced somehow that he's bringing a dirty bomb into Gotham, which I don't really get. The other issue is Alfred's upset because he puts down a newspaper. The headline is Bat Brand of Justice, and it shows the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Alfred's asking, like, what's going on here? And Bruce says that nothing's changed. And Alfred says, oh, yes, it has, sir. Everything's changed. Man falls from the sky. The gods hurl thunderbolts. Innocents die. That's how it starts, sir. The fever, the rage, the feeling of powerlessness that turns good men cruel.
Alfred is having a stroke that requires speaking in movie trailerese.
Yes. And weirdly, like this, I think this is Snyderism just explained to us because, you know, what he's saying is there's the fever and the rage and the feeling of powerlessness, and that turns good men cruel because Zack Snyder believes each individual man needs to dominate as much of their surrounding as they possibly can. Mm-hmm. And if there's something new that you can't control, then you feel rage. And not having ultimate power over every single thing around you is the worst thing that can happen to somebody.
Absolutely. And there's a way to communicate this one as a human being speak to another human being, being that people you cared about have died recently. You feel responsible for that. You feel like you weren't able to protect them and you've spent your whole life protecting people, and that's sending you in a darker path.
Right.
That would require someone who knows how human beings speak.
Can talk like a person, yeah. You know who's powerful is Lex Luthor, young trillionaire tech tycoon who can basically do anything. And he's played by Jesse Eisenberg as this manic motor-mouth one percenter. Dazzles the world with his confidence and quick talking. What's your thoughts on Jesse Eisenberg?
I like Jesse Eisenberg again at other things. When I rewatched this, I felt better about his performance than I had previously, where I thought he was just too. I don't like a Lex Luthor who's very close to the Joker in certain ways or manic. I like him, and I feel like he sort of played this poor little rich boy. I guess his father built a company, and it's not clear how he got the company. Again, he would have reason to dislike Superman if he owns most of the city.
But when you get right down to it, like the reason why he wants to dominate Superman, the thing that bothers him about Superman is he can't dominate him and he can't dominate Batman. And that is basically the thing that animates him through the entire movie. But he's meeting with Senator Finch, who was running those Senate hearings because he's got a little chunk of glowing green metal, which they have somehow figured out might be harmful to Kryptonians. And they've tested it on General Zod, and it creates, what do they call it? Profound biodegradation, whatever that is. So his people have found this chunk of kryptonite in the Indian Ocean, and it's radioactive. And so he needs an import license for it.
Yeah.
Senator asks like why he wants to weaponize it. And so this is where we get the theme of that this is a deterrent, that we need to keep, if there are these metahumans, we need to keep them in check by forging this weapon that could kill them.
Yeah, I guess got to be on Team Luthor on this, and why the senator's curious cluelessness, because I feel like this our own government would, well, of course, he's a god from the sky. We have something, because, Danny, we all have our own kryptonite. It's called a bullet, or the cops have tasers or whatever. There's often this thing, that idea that like, oh no, only bad guys would ever want to have kryptonite. Well, no, he is completely unstoppable, and not to spoil things later on, kryptonite proves very key
Yes.
to stopping another killing machine. So
Yeah.
yes, it would just be like, well, of course, Superman himself would probably support it. It's like, well, yes, you should.
If we could sit down and talk to him, yeah.
He would be like, yeah, of course, like have just like every other citizen on Earth. If I make choices that are bad, you
Right.
have a response to protect yourselves from me.
Let's talk about the Jolly Rancher.
God, that's see,
The Jolly fucking Rancher.
it's the dominance, right?
It is. Senator Finch walks away, and this little bootlicker stays behind to basically agree to whatever Lex wants. He's going to give him access to General Zod's body. He's going to give him access to General Zod's ship. And while Lex is making these requests, he takes a Jolly Rancher from a little jar and unwraps it. And he holds it up to the guy's mouth. And the guy says no. He shakes his head. And Lex just sticks it in his mouth, like between his lips. And then he like taps it in. It's one of them high fructose sexual assaults that you just don't see in movies that much.
Snyder's sense of what dominance is very petty and small. That's not how actual tough guys or powerful people show. And this will be an ongoing issue where
Yes.
Lex will do things that's not what a powerful person would actually do.
If only someone had warned us that being a tech billionaire made you insane and dangerous. I wish someone had told us that, because that was information that we should have had leading up to now.
Yeah.
What about Wally the security guard? Lost his legs during the Metropolis attack?
Do you get the sense that Superman knows or cares?
No, absolutely not.
That would haunt me.
Yeah, they have this big black marble statue of Superman in Metropolis with a kind of like a Vietnam memorial wall of names around it for people that died that day. And it would be nice to show Superman standing there. It wouldn't have taken that much effort.
What about that statue? One,
The statue, I know.
that's they built that very quickly. My wife, who's works in that kind of area, she's a lawyer, and sort of snarkily, it's like they would still be doing the environmental study on this statue. There's points in this film where Snyder's like, oh, I really wish I was doing this Christopher Reeve Superman who people like and trust complete, and and that's not this version of the character. There is no statue for the guy who 18 months later, there are people without legs because of what he did.
Where he doesn't show that he cares. Yeah. We go to the Daily Planet, where Perry White, editor of the Daily Planet, he is an asshole to everyone.
Yeah.
For this entire movie. He does not...
It's not good at all.
He does not seem to like anybody on his staff. He doesn't like reporters or newspapers. Perry's thing is historically that he is grumpy, that he's like the grumpy, gruff, he's kind of demanding, but underneath he really respects his staff and likes them. And instead of doing that, like this film just doubles down on him being grumpy. And because no one is ever nice in a Zack Snyder movie unless they want something.
What will forever piss me off as a journalist is he enters and points at Clark and says, "You're on sports today." Because that's how Zack Snyder thinks that journalism works. Like, even if you didn't know, like, I'm not a doctor, I didn't go to med school. If I'm writing a grade, like, I wouldn't have like the chief of staff go,
somebody comes in,
you're on heart surgeries today. that seems like something that you might want to specialize in.
Yeah, you have a person who does that. Yeah. He has kind of like this vague idea for a story that he wants Clark to go out and write. It's super unclear what he thinks he's even doing in this place.
They have no idea anything works. Again, he's a jerk. He's making fun of Clark most of the time.
Him a nerd? Awful. Yeah.
Which he is not. Like, that's the script. Like, okay.
Yeah.
This is this chiseled god. His suit's not ill-fitting. Yeah. He's playing it as Superman with glasses on. Like, no one would think this guy is a nerd.
Next, we see what looks like an unlicensed mixed martial arts boxing match being held randomly at a bar somewhere. A lot of people yelling, guys punching the shit out of his opponent. This is basically what's happening in Zack Snyder's head all the time. So he might as well put it in the movie. There's a little dream sequence with Bruce at his parents' mausoleum that basically exists for two reasons. First, it gives us a long close-up on Martha Wayne's headstone, because we got to remember her name. And then the second reason to have a dream sequence is Bruce wakes up and there's a naked lady in his bed
Mm-hmm.
to establish that, yes, Batman has sex with girls. And then he gets out of bed and we see his shirtless torso in silhouette, which establishes Henry Cavill is not the only one who goes to the gym.
And he has a cooler kind of sex from Snyder standards because it's kind of he's got some bullet scars and stuff like that.
Yes.
He's earned it.
Well, this is a major theme in the movie. Like Batman and Superman are both ridiculously enormous, and the whole movie is about like which one of them is stronger. And then they do something which I find amusing, that like he gets up, he puts on all his clothes, he goes and has a conversation with Alfred. He's done his hair, he puts a jacket on. Alfred gives him an invitation to a party, and then Bruce takes all of his clothes off again, and he has a shower scene. The shower scene is like 8 seconds long. You see him completely naked from the back. You see his huge shoulder, which I appreciate. It's all part of the superhero movie's unrealistic, unhealthy male body image expectations, which I am in favor of. Because it provides me with a great deal of enjoyment in my life. You know, Ben Affleck, he's not as hot as Henry Cavill, obviously, because literally nobody is as hot as Henry Cavill, but he's doing his homework, and I appreciate that. Bruce is all cleaned up. He's going to a charity event for the Metropolis Library, which is being held at Lex Luthor's house. So he needs to get some data out of Lex Luthor's house. Bruce arrives. Clark is actually already there. He's covering the story for no reason. And the important thing is that now we see a mysterious woman, capital letters, who makes eye contact with Bruce. And the way that the scene is constructed, we're supposed to be fascinated by this beautiful woman, and her identity is a secret that Bruce is going to uncover over the next little while. Except you and me and everybody else in the audience, we live in reality where there is an enormous extra diegetic publicity machine that has spared no effort to make sure we all know this is Gal Gadot. She is the new Wonder Woman.
And they could have resolved that by, it wasn't like a fancy dress party where you're required to dress at your absolute peak hotness. So, and yes. Wonder Woman is a character, going back to the Linda Carter, so where Diana Prince would sort of like Superman, big glasses, bun, dress unassumingly.
Right. No, not this one. Yeah. Bruce sort of sneaks downstairs, finds a glass wall with a bunch of servers behind it, and he has a magic data stealing box, so he hooks that onto the wall. He has to leave it there for a while so it copies all of Lex's data. There's a lot of data transference in this movie. Then he goes back upstairs. He has a little scene with Clark where they are both pretending that they're not famous cartoon characters. And it's one of the few scenes, the ridiculously few scenes, where the two lead characters actually talk to each other. We are almost an hour into the movie, and the two lead characters have just met.
And Clark begins with some junior high school level questions.
Yes.
What do you think of Batman?
And the problem is, like, as I totally agree, like, as shallow as that conversation is, I wish that they had done a ton more like that.
Absolutely.
Like, there are good arguments to make about Superman's place in civil society. It would be great if that was like a running argument between the two actual leads in the movie.
Oh, yeah. Or if Clark was investigating Bruce Wayne, like he hasn't done any of, so the research.
Yeah, he's
as
not
a reporter.
Right. Yeah.
He's approaching him with like, what do you think? He's doing mean things. He's violating civil liberties.
He's not talking to him because I suspect that you are Batman.
And with zero chemistry, zero charm, it is a shame. I feel like I am just going to be so sad for Henry Cavill because I feel like Snyder is telling him to tamp down. He's someone who probably comes in with charisma.
Yep.
And he's saying,
you're right.
Tamp it down.
Bruce heads back downstairs to get his magic data stealing box. And when he gets there, it's gone because it's been stolen by this mysterious lady who is secretly Wonder Woman. And this is incredibly frustrating for Bruce and for us because it slows the movie down. Because now we have to wait for another charity fundraiser so that Batman can get his stuff back and move the plot forward again. So you want Clark to do good things. I got a good thing for you. While all the data stuff is going on, Clark hears a news report about a big fire in Juarez where a little girl is trapped and nobody seems to be doing anything about it. And so because there's a girl in trouble somewhere in the world, that means Superman has to swing into action. And so here, speeds to Mexico, brings that girl safely to the ground. This is during a Day of the Dead celebration, so there's a huge crowd of people, some of them with Day of the Dead makeup on, so they look like skeletons. Everybody crowds around him, and this is a little moment where we see Superman interacting with normal people, which is nice, but everyone is trying to touch him like he's a god.
The God thing is just so. Whenever you go down that path, I lose all interest in
Yeah.
Superman, and that should not be. It should be more of like the coolest celebrity in the world. It's how he
Yes.
was treated
Yeah.
in the Reeve films,
Yeah.
and I think that has to be the conceit. If you go against that conceit, if you try to address him as like aliens among us or even a god among us,
Yeah.
it all falls apart.
Yeah.
Uh,
And yeah, and it's not really his character. Like he should be like, "Oh, thanks so much." And yeah, and like taking selfies with people. He doesn't move. He
yeah.
doesn't say anything. He doesn't move. He just stands there. Yeah, looking all serious.
And
So
that's
weird.
not Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill could
I
have done
know.
so well with like, oh, let me take the selfie with you, or whatever, which is what treating him as a celebrity, which is what would happen.
Right.
And so then we get, despite having seen a lot of cool Batman scenes, we literally get scenes, boring scenes of Superman being shown intercut with like CNN footage or something.
Yeah, we get all these news clips of these like talking heads talking about politics and power and control. But the thing that annoys me is that Superman is not part of this conversation. It's so annoying to me. He's so in this movie, he's so passive. Like all of this stuff is just stuff that happens to Superman without him actually taking an
Yeah,
active part.
because it's a Batman film.
Yeah. Bullets. I've been avoiding this all this time. The bullet in a movie full of things that drive me crazy. The bullet. This is a very suspicious bullet. She brings it to some scientist who says, like, I've never seen a metal like this. And they say, like, this could be like DARPA, this could be like the military inventing new weapons. And Lois is like, but why would they give these new special bullets to like test them on rebels in Nairobi? And like they're just like giving them to mercenaries. A, what is special about this bullet? B, why do you need to test new machine gun bullets? Machine guns already kill people about as effectively as we need them to.
Mm-hmm.
Why would inventing a brand new bullet contribute to the experience of being shot by a machine gun?
I have no idea what's happening, what's going on. I watched again about
I
the
know.
bullets. That was that couldn't follow this plot.
And I gotta say, I'm good. I am pretty good at watching movies. I've watched movies before. And this whole plot line just doesn't make so why do you need to test it? Also, we know this bullet isn't any stronger than a regular bullet because it got stuck in Lois's notebook. Like it literally couldn't go through paper.
Mm-hmm.
I do not understand the bullet situation. Wally in his wheelchair. He gets sprung from jail by an extremely skinny woman who works for Lex Luthor.
Oh
I,
God.
I don't know what to do with her.
So that is Mercy.
Yeah.
He will later mention her name in offhand. She never speaks. Mercy Graves is a character from the Superman cartoon of the mid 90s, very
Mm.
popular.
Mm-hmm.
And she was good in the comic because she spoke in the cartoon. She spoke and she had a
Right.
relationship with Luthor.
You had an actress playing that part. Yeah.
Yeah, and she had a relationship with Luthor, and
Yeah.
she was kind of cool, his sort of chauffeur style bodyguard, and she was badass, and they had a relationship. And but in here, he betrays her, and it doesn't matter because it's this whole thing of Snyder grabbing names out of a hat, like, oh, there's a KG Beast, and he was Russian. And granted, that's two things about the character, and the rest I'll ignore. And then
Right.
here's like this character Mercy, and there's Jimmy Olsen. I'm just gonna kill and do what I want.
Right. Kill all
And
these people. Yeah.
so yes, so she works for Lex and is there.
She brings Wally home, and Lex is there in his apartment with a brand new fancy wheelchair because Lex wants Wallace to go and tell his Superman sob story to Senator Fitch
Mm-hmm.
and have more pointless hearings.
Lex is seems to really want to implicate himself in crimes, doesn't he?
He really does. Well, in the same way that Anatoly doesn't go personally and take care of every, he needs to, bribe the shoe shine boy and he goes and gives a nickel to him. So then there's another fancy party. People in this town love their fancy parties, which they create so that Bruce has an opportunity to meet up with the mystery woman. And it makes me wonder if he's been going to like every public event in Metropolis and Gotham City just so he can find Wonder Woman and ask for his little data box back. But if that's what he's done, it works. It works like a charm. And Wonder Woman is extremely naked in this scene.
Oh yeah. No, none of the again.
Her top is like two strips of spangly fabric and a sleeve.
I didn't know if I needed to go to the shareholders meeting at Warner Brothers and just say, look, as a heterosexual man, Gal Gadot in a nice pantsuit with her
Right,
hair pulled back and
she's already
glass.
beautiful.
I'm done. I'm good. 15-year-old me would have still been good. I would have just been very happy with that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
don't need to have her actually naked.
And this is a woman who's got a secret identity that she wants to hide. Like maybe don't draw all of the attention
Yes.
in the room slash earth to you in this outfit. Yep. Bruce wants to know who she is, but she doesn't want to tell him yet because it is still Act One, and that is not Act One information. She says that Luther has a photograph that belongs to her, and that's why she stole the data box.
Mm-hmm.
That sentence does not make any logical sense, considering the way that computer data works. But she needs
Mm-hmm.
to say it for a plot point later on. And it
Yeah.
feels to me like Gal Gadot is new, and she will still say whatever they tell her to say. But Bruce has his magic box now. He gets it back. He hooks it up to his big computer. Now he is decrypting, which we know because it says decrypting 1%. And then suddenly, for no reason, Bruce is in an apocalyptic future where everything is a war zone and sepia toned, and there is barbed wire, and we see chunks of the world that are on fire, and these creepy ass looking spaceships
Mm-hmm.
that are hovering around. It is very unclear what this is supposed to be.
That's the mid-credit scene in the middle of the movie. That's very
Yeah,
ambitious.
it's
But it's gonna drop the mid-credit scene. You haven't finished
it's
watching
right here.
this one.
Yeah, we're so confident in it. Mean people driving around in Mad Max trucks because the world has been laid to waste, but people are still driving trucks. This doesn't have anything to do really with anything in particular. It's just like this little slice of grimdark because Snyder just wanted some.
Will Superman go evil? Will he burn people? Will
Yeah.
he have let's have Henry Cavill scowling some more.
Yep. There's all these soldiers with a Superman patch on their sleeves. Everybody's just shooting each other for no reason, and which it doesn't seem like there are that many people left in the world at this point, so I don't think they should be shooting the ones that they've got left. Like we're gonna need them later on. It's called a population. It's pretty important. There's also a huge invasion of bug people, which just kind of comes up in the middle of this scene. These bug people arrive with huge wings and they pick people up and carry them away, and nobody really seems to notice.
Yes, the parademons.
Bug aliens? Is that what they are?
The parademons from the and they will turn up in the wonderful Justice League movie that you will be subjecting yourself to because you're
Oh,
a
I forgot
martyr.
all about them. Yeah.
You're a martyr for the cause, Danny.
Yep,
But
I'm getting
but yes, this is all a bit to be here's all the great stuff that's gonna come.
Yep.
And I tend to think, why don't you just make a good movie now?
Yeah.
And I will ask you for more things.
Right. Batman. So this is the amazing thing for me is in this apocalyptic sequence, Batman gets knocked unconscious and then he wakes up and he's still like manacled up by the wrists, and Superman comes and kills him. And then he wakes up again and he's back in the Batcave and stuff is still crazy. And now there's Ezra Miller here,
Mm-hmm.
which is always cause for alarm. Flash has an urgent message from the future that Bruce needs to listen to about Lois Lane. This is all, I guess, Justice League stuff. The Flash says you've always been right about him. Fear him, which is not as helpful as it could be. And then Bruce wakes up again for the third time and is now back in the waking world. So
a lot of dreams.
Don't drink and decrypt, I guess, is the message here. So now Bruce is convinced that Superman is the devil and he's going to destroy the world. He looks into his decrypted data. He finds out there's a ship coming to deliver the kryptonite to Lex Luthor. Now, he could just sit back at this point and let Lex Luthor kill Superman, but no, he has to go and steal the kryptonite from Lex so he can kill Superman instead. He's got a little argument with Alfred about whether we need to go to war with Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And his argument is if we believe there's even a 1% chance that he's our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certainty and we have to destroy him. This is delusional logic.
Yeah, it's insane troll logic. So the having the kryptonite is your precaution against so you don't just summarily execute people.
Right. Yeah, no,
That
you have it right, and then that's the
we're
deterrent.
we're in
Yeah,
a society. Like
yeah,
you don't nuke countries. You
right.
have nukes.
Immediately, yeah, just to
So
get that
this
over with. If there's a 1% chance,
so as Superman, your kryptonite is essentially mutually assured destruction, right? Superman could
right?
be dangerous, but we've got the
The
Rock,
thing, yeah,
and so that is resolved. That's sort of a diplomatic thing, but
yeah,
you don't get to like work out weirdly with your shirt off and fight Superman and then kill him.
yeah. Then there's a big Batmobile chase scene, which I think is like the first action scene in the movie. Everything else has just been like charity auctions, and I am honestly, I'm so exhausted by Act One. I don't even really want to talk about it.
Superman shows up as a big jerk bully.
Yeah, it's. I think this is the worst scene in the film. Is he
Yeah.
just looks at Batman all angry and mean, and it's like the first thing he says ever is, "Next time they shine your light in the sky, don't go to it. The bat is dead. Bury it. Consider this mercy." Which is
Yeah.
terrible. And then, worse than that, you would think it couldn't get worse. Batman looks at him and says, "Do you bleed?" And Superman is disgusted by this, and so am I. And as he flies away, Batman says, "You will."
This is Zack Snyder, like, thinks that's a converse, like, that's how people should talk.
Yeah.
He's sort of proving Batman's thesis in a way, right? So he
Mhm.
screws up, lets the
Oh, yeah.
kryptonite get in hand of a larger, more dangerous threat to him.
Mhm.
And if there's a light in the sky, Danny, like if there's a goddamn bat signal,
Yeah.
maybe instead of threatening Batman, you
Mhm.
want to go to Commissioner Gordon, go to the mayor. You're a reporter, right? Like
yeah.
if there's a reign of terror, because maybe it's
Right.
not just this one crazy guy in a bat. Maybe it's an
Yeah.
entire thing.
Maybe there's a society.
You should be going. He even says, like, it seems like the cops are enabling him or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Oh,
a
let's
reign
talk
of.
the times. Yeah.
You should talk to, as a reporter. There's like no scene of him going to the mayor or Commissioner Gordon. I guess you'd have to hire him and have him have that dialogue, because this is not a character who talks to people. He does not communicate, even though his job is communication. He does not communicate to anyone, and he threatens him as a bully. So I'm so dominant, I can tell you to just
what to do. Shut it down.
And it's not a dialogue of like, what are you doing, my friend? Whatever. It's just two bros yelling at each other.
Yep. And with Zack Snyder fully committing to all of his flaws and failures, that is the end of Act 1 of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Thanks for sticking with us in this supersized episode. Act 2 is even more fun than this. It's coming up later this week, and here's what's happening. Before slipping on the boxing gloves for this all-night cartoon character fight club, both of our contestants need to go and talk to their dead fathers, as if they ever do anything else.
That's going to be important later. We talk about implicating yourself in criminal conspiracies, which Liz Lex loves to do. That's his jam.
This is one of those somehow type plot points. Like, they just got a big truck full of somehow, and they just backed it up every single part of this.
Someone killed these people. Even O.J. Simpson promised to find the real killers. He at least made the effort.
He's not even doing that. You are so right. And he tells Lois no one stays good in this world, which is a message I'm not sure it needs to be expressed through the medium of a Superman movie. All right, stay tuned for that. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Danny.
I will meet you back here for Act 2 of Batman v Superman on the Superheroes Everyday podcast. Thanks for listening.
Tell me,